reading this Marvel magazine, and I got it because they tricked me into buying it. They put Doctor Strange on the cover, and it looks like a Doctor Strange magazine, right? And I'm a big Doctor Strange fan. The movies are okay, but I was more into the comics. I mean, that's where I first got into them, and I figured, oh, it's a magazine. They'll go into the history of the comic. Not really. They have one little feature, and the rest is about the bulk of the book. Like 80% of it is just about different Marvel characters. But they have a thing here about Moon Knight. It shows like Oscar Isaac stars as Mark Spector, a man with dissociative identity disorder who can't seem to separate reality from his dreams. That has nothing to do with dissociative identity disorder. That's not what it is. It's not, you can't figure out your dreams from reality. That's, I don't know what the fuck that is. And maybe they know that and they weren't trying to say that, but then you have the wording so close to each other, you know? A man with dissociative identity disorder who can't seem to separate, and it implies that that's what his condition is. And that's not what that shit is at all. You know, it's not that at all. In fact, I tuned into this, the first episode, to see how they would portray that. And actually, that was a added thing to his character. When he first came out in the 70s, and I used to read him when he first came out, in the 80s mainly. He came out in the 70s, but the 80s was his comic series that I got into. He had these other identities just for the purposes of crime fighting. Like, they would take him different places. He had, like, Jake Lockheed was a cab driver, and with that identity, he could get underworld contacts. Then he had Mark Spector, who was like an archaeologist. He had just these different identities that will allow him to go into different places. I think the DID thing was added in the 2000s by that Max kid, the one that got in trouble for inappropriate behavior with children in a park. He also sang for the band Say Anything. They don't, you know, they call everybody toxic, but, you know, this is the kind of stuff their own people get up to. But they always gloss over the kids. They don't seem to hold anybody accountable for kid stuff. That's because they're closer to the beast in the entertainment industry, and they know that kids are the most valuable resource in the world. From them come a lot of different industries that these people rely on for various things. So they always give the kid shit a pass. But yeah, I think he was the one that came up with the idea of including that particular mental illness as a new way of contextualizing why he has all these identities. It's kind of a cool idea, I think. It's not a bad idea. It's just the execution's weird. If the show is anything to go by, the one thing they did kind of get right is, although they portray it very extremely, is the amnesic effect that you tend to get after the fact. It's way overblown. You don't moment to moment just out like that, and then you're like, what just happened? It's not like that. It's like maybe a couple of days later, you'll be like, you know, like I'll fucking tell you, like, I saw an ad for Long Promised Road, the Brian Wilson movie. I'm like, oh, is that like a documentary? And I was like, really interested in it. So I tracked it down. I watched some trailers and parts for it on YouTube before I tracked the movie down. And I'm like, this seems really familiar. But I know I haven't seen it, you know? And turns out, yeah, I had already watched it. And it's recent. This is a movie that came out this year, you know? But that's what it's like. It's like, oh shit. It's like when you go to comment on a video on YouTube after watching something for what you think is the first time, and then you go to make a comment and you see that you've already commented. And you're like, oh, And then you read what you said, and you're like, well, that sounds like me. I don't have any memory of watching this or writing that, though. That's what DID is kind of like. But in those times you don't remember, you were functioning and like doing your own thing. It was just like a different kind of mood or a personality. It's embarrassing and fucking horrible, especially when it involves people. Like, you'll see someone you haven't seen in a while, or you'll just see someone you see all the time, and they'll be like kind of cold to you, and you'll be like, what the fuck? What did you do to them? And then you'll find out like you did something weird, like you called them at 11:30 at night to ask them something not inappropriate so much, but something that doesn't have to do with anything. And you upset them because it was late at night and they thought it was an emergency, and you have no memory of that. But when you're making that phone call 11:30 at night, it's, to you at the time, it seems logical, because I do get flashes of not thinking back to it. Sometimes when I'm doing something, I'll think, is this weird to do? And then I'll just dismiss the thought. And then that event that I had that thought in is something that I'll forget about, because I was operating with a different, mood. I don't really think of it in terms of, like how a girl on TikTok does when they're LARPing. Like, this is Sasha, and Sasha doesn't like ice cream. It's like, it's not like that. It's fucking, it's aggravating, is what it is. But it's cool. Hey, people have way worse, with way worse things. But I'm starting to try to figure out, or I'm beginning to the early stages of undertaking some kind of study with myself about how much of it has to do with my brain. Because are these mental health problems, or are they what I suspect more spiritual in nature, and how exactly that works? I haven't determined exactly the parameters of this experiment or study, but I'm going to document it, of course, right? And I want to try to figure out how much of it really is my brain, because to me, the brain runs the suit. It's in charge of the mechanical aspects of the suit, and it can do some filing where it'll file your memories in a way like you can put a file of a movie in your computer, but you didn't act in that movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, that movie isn't something you took part in, but your brain will keep it on file so you can access it later to reference it. No, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I'll come up with like 5 more shitty analogies, but it's something like that. But yeah, this just caught my eye. And thought I had something interesting to say about it, but I think that's up for, I wouldn't take a show of hands on that. And don't blame the teacher, blame the school.